All right, let's get ready for another deep dive. Today, we're taking a closer look at Emirates Airlines.
Always exciting.
Yeah, a listener sent in this article from the Express Tribune called UAE Carrier Spends $2 on Aircraft Retrofitting. And, well, $2 billion, that's a lot of money for some
It says
upgrades.
it's definitely caught my eye, too.
So we got to figure out what's going on with Emirates, why all these investments, and what does it mean for everyone else, the whole airline industry.
Yeah.
Plus, get this, they just opened this experiential travel store in Karachi, Pakistan.
Oh, yeah, I read about that.
But what does that even mean, experiential travel store?
Well, it's kind of like, imagine a travel agency, but instead of just brochures and, a desk, you're actually immersed in the Emirates experience.
Oh, okay.
You might have, like, VR tours of their cabins, those fancy first-class suites,
Oh, wow.
or interactive displays where you can explore different destinations, maybe even, like, samples of their food.
So it's less about booking a flight and more about selling a feeling.
Exactly. They're selling a lifestyle, attracting a certain type of traveler, especially in a growing market like Pakistan.
Makes sense. And it's not just a random marketing thing, right? The article mentioned some pretty high-profile guests at the store opening.
Right. Dignitaries from both the UAE and Pakistan.
Shows how tight those two countries are, both economically and politically.
Absolutely. This store is a pretty big statement. It's as much about international relations as it is about selling plane tickets.
Okay, so they're making a splash in Pakistan, but here's the thing. The article also says they're not buying into Pakistan International Airlines.
Yeah, PIA. It's interesting they decided to pass on that.
Right, even though it's, up for grabs. And instead, they're pouring all that money into fixing up their own planes.
It makes you think, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Why not just buy another airline?
Yeah, expand that way.
Well, it seems like Emirates is really focusing on controlling their own destiny.
Oh, I
They want to
see.
make sure every detail, every passenger experience is top-notch. And they can do that best with their own fleet.
So it's about quality over quantity.
Exactly. They're doubling down on what they're known for, luxury and that premium experience.
I can already picture those upgraded cabins, the latest gadgets, maybe even like those lie-flat seats.
Don't forget about the efficiency improvements, too.
Oh, right.
Newer planes are often more fuel efficient, which is good for the environment and, of course, their bottom line.
That's a good point. But the article also mentions something about Dubai's open skies policy. What's that all about?
Ah, that's a key factor here. Open skies basically means fewer restrictions on international airlines flying in and out of Dubai.
So more competition.
Exactly. It creates this environment where airlines have to fight harder for passengers. You got to offer better prices, better services to stand out. It's good for travelers, ultimately.
So with all this in mind, it makes sense why Emirates sees Pakistan as a land of opportunity. Right?
Absolutely. They're betting on a government that's open to their vision, a growing economy, and a population that's eager to travel.
Speaking of opportunity, the article also mentions something about cargo operations.
Oh, yeah.
And I gotta admit, I usually skip over that stuff. Cargo doesn't sound very exciting.
I get it, but it's actually a bigger deal than you might think. It's a huge part of Emirates' business, especially when it comes to Pakistan.
Really? So it's not just about moving boxes from one place to another.
It's way more than that. Cargo operations are all about connecting economies. They create jobs, they improve infrastructure, and they can actually be a major driver of economic growth, both for Emirates and for their partner countries.
So it's kind of like the unsung hero of the airline industry.
In a way, yeah. It's not glamorous, but it's essential, and Emirates knows that.
Wow, I'm starting to see the bigger picture here. It seems like Emirates is playing the long game, making moves that could benefit them and their partners for years to come.
Absolutely. They're thinking strategically, and they're not afraid to invest in the future.
This is why I love these deep dives. We start with one article, and suddenly we're talking about global economics and the future of travel.
It's all connected, isn't it?
It really is. But let's bring it back down to earth for a second. What does all this mean for the average traveler?
That's the million-dollar question, right?
Yeah.
Should we all be rushing to book our next flight with Emirates? Well, it really depends on what you're looking for in a travel experience. If you're all about that premium feel, those luxurious cabins and top-notch service,
Yeah.
then Emirates might be right up your alley, especially if you're flying through Dubai. But it's not just about the fancy stuff, right?
Right.
Their expansion into Pakistan, that can shake things up for everybody. More competition often means better prices. So even if you don't fly Emirates directly,
Yeah.
you might still benefit.
Oh, interesting. Like a trickle-down effect.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It could push other airlines to offer better deals, maybe even improve their service, just to keep up.
So everyone wins, in a way.
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it all depends on how things play out.
But let's not forget about those open skies policies. We talked about the good stuff, more competition and all.
Yeah.
But are there, like, any downsides?
Well, some people argue that too much competition can lead to, a race to the bottom.
Oh, okay.
Airlines might cut corners to save money, which could impact safety or, the quality of service.
It's a balancing act.
Exactly. You want competition, but you also need regulations to make sure things don't get out of hand.
And that's where governments come in, right?
Yeah, absolutely. They have
Right.
to set those standards and make sure everyone's playing by the rules.
This is getting complex. And it reminds me, we talked about how Emirates is really focusing on Pakistan.
Right.
But the article mentioned that their success there depends on the Pakistani government, right?
Yeah, the article quoted the Emirates senior VP. He said Pakistan has huge potential, but
What?
he emphasized that it all hinges on the government, working with them, supporting their initiatives.
So it's not just a business decision. There's a lot of politics involved, too.
Always.
Yeah.
International business is never simple. You've got to navigate all these relationships, governments, local communities.
Yeah.
It's a delicate dance.
It's like a giant chess game with
Yeah.
Emirates making these strategic moves
And the Pakistani government making their own moves.
and everyone trying to come out ahead,
Exactly. And we, the travelers, we're all kind of caught in the middle.
hoping for the best. But hey, at least we're getting a better understanding of how it all works.
That's the goal, right? To connect the dots and see the bigger picture.
And speaking of connecting the dots, remember how we talked about cargo? Those big planes hauling stuff around?
Yes. The unsung hero of aviation.
I have to admit, I never really gave it much thought before, but you've convinced me it's a pretty big deal.
It's essential, really. Those planes are moving goods, creating jobs,
Yeah.
supporting entire industries.
It's like the circulatory system of the global economy.
I like that. Keeps everything flowing.
It makes you realize just how interconnected we all are.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What happens in one part of the world can have ripple effects everywhere else.
So we've talked about Emirates, their investments, the competition, the politics.
The economics, the
It
cargo.
really- yeah, it's a lot to take in. But I think it's time to bring it back to our listeners.
Yes, let's focus on what this all means for the individual traveler.
Because at the end of the day, that's what matters, right?
Exactly. How will these industry shifts, these big decisions, affect your next trip?
Let's explore that. So should we all be booking our next vacation with Emirates?
Well, it depends, right? It's not a one-size-fits-all kind of thing.
Right. Yeah.
If you're someone who, really values that premium experience, the fancy cabins, the top-notch service,
Yeah.
and you're flying through Dubai, then yeah, Emirates could be a great choice.
Makes sense.
But if you're more focused on, finding the cheapest flight possible,
A budget traveler.
exactly, there might be better options out there, especially with all those low-cost carriers popping up.
True, true. So it's all about knowing your priorities, what you're willing to spend.
Absolutely. But here's the thing. Even if you don't end up flying Emirates,
Yeah.
their investments could still benefit you indirectly. Think about it. They're raising the bar.
Oh, I see.
Other airlines might have to, step up their game to compete. Better service, maybe even lower prices across the board.
So everyone wins.
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like a rising tide lifts all boats, right?
I like that analogy. But beyond just the passenger experience, we talked about cargo too.
Oh, yes. Cargo, the unsung hero.
Right. How does that fit into all of this?
Well, as Emirates expands their cargo operations, it could mean a more efficient flow of goods around the world. Faster shipping, maybe even lower prices for consumers. Who knows?
It's not just about getting from point A to point B. It's about the stuff that gets shipped too.
Exactly. It all ties back to that interconnectedness we were talking about.
Right. It's amazing how one company's decisions can have these ripple effects.
It really is. It
Can-
shows how complex the world is, how everything's intertwined.
Well, I think it's safe to say we've covered a lot of ground today. Started with Emirates, ended up talking about the whole global economy.
And that's the beauty of these deep dives, isn't it? You never know where they'll take you.
Exactly. So to our listeners, thanks for joining us on this journey. We hope you learned something new, maybe even got inspired to do some exploring of your own.
Keep asking those questions, folks. The world is full of fascinating connections just waiting to be discovered.
And until next time, happy travels.